Was that one? Okay. All the commandments, all the mitzvahs of a son on the father are obligatory for men, but women are exempt. This means whatever a father or a parent is obligated to the child, right? It's the father that has to do it. But the mothers are exempt. Mothers don't have to do it. All the commandments of a father on a son, however, all those mitzvahs that a father has to do for his son. Let's get it back again. Normal. All the commandments of the son on the father. That means those are mitzvahs that a father has to do for his son. Right? That's the mitzvah that a father has to do for his son. So these commandments are obligatory upon men, but they are exempt for women. Correct? Let's look at the commentary on the bottom. All the commandments of the son of the father. Commandments, right? Bent on a father concerning his son. Not sure what this word means. The commandments that a father has to do for his son. Let's make it simple English. These things that a father has to do for his son. He has to circumcise him. Now, the mitzvah of circumcision, we learned about it on Thursday in the parsha. Now, the mitzvah of circumcision is a mitzvah that two parts to the mitzvah. One is that has to be done. Two, that's got to get done. In this, you might argue that maybe all mitzvahs are that way. I mean, A, you got to do it, and B, it's got to get done. But that's not completely true, because many times you might have a mitzvah that you have to do, but you can't do it completely. You have to, it's dependent upon someone else, for instance, and you might have to get someone to help you or whatever. So those kind of mitzvahs, I mean, you want to do what you got to do. And if you don't get the job done completely, then someone else will help you. So we did a mitzvah this morning. Someone was still here earlier. We gave a little tzedakah to a poor lady that came to ask for money. So in giving this mitzvah, maybe I was able to give the lady $50, which was a nice gift, I think. And but everybody participated. This guy gave $5, that person gave $5, stuff like that. So in the end, you get credit if you gave it $50. Because why? Because in fact, you contributed to that. And, it's like a Sefer Torah. Here's a Torah. Now everybody knows that Torah is 5 books, right? Everybody knows that the 5 books are divided into 54 different portions, right? And each portion is divided into chapters, and each chapter is divided into sentences, and each sentence is divided into words, and each word is divided into letters. What happens if the Sefer Torah is missing one letter?
It's no longer kosher.
Now, let's take a look at it this way. Let's say there's a letter called Vav. Right, the Vav is the V sound, right? What happens if you put a dot on top of that Vav? It's no longer a letter. Now it becomes a vowel. Right. It becomes an O, right? But you could theoretically get the same sound by putting a dot in without the Vav. Isn't that right? Could you do that?
Yeah.
You put just a dot on top of the word, right?
Right.
And then you don't need the above anymore. It depends. It varies. In grammar, if you use above, you don't use above. You follow me? Well, anyway, suppose they forget the above. In other words, the tradition requires, the halacha requires that there to be above. Certain cases doesn't require above. It's the same sound. But this one requires above. And the sober forgot to put the above in. It does not kosher, even though it sounds the same. Everything's no change. But the door is not kosher. So understanding one letter means the whole Sefer Torah. If a person were to write one letter in the Torah, in a Torah, that person would be considered to be wrote an entire Torah. Then there's a mitzvah in the Torah, once in number 613. Number 613 is the very last mitzvah in the Torah, in the end of Deuteronomy, the end of the 5th book, the end of the Torah.
To write your own.
To write your own Sefer Torah. In our book, you can find it in mitzvah number 15, I believe. Let's see if I'm right. Let's see if my memory serves. Mitzvah number 15, is that correct? Yes. Whoa. Yes, sir. 15. Ardell, am I right?
Yes, you're right.
Haha, never doubt me, never doubt me. So you see here that there's a mitzvah to write the Torah. So what's the meaning of mitzvah to write the Torah? Well, today, folks, it costs you about $40,000 to write a Sefer Torah. So in case you don't have $40,000 lying around, if you can find someone that's writing the Torah and get one letter in for yourself, right? Oh wait, I can't write the Torah. I don't know how to write the script. You're right. So sometimes you can ask Sofer, right? You can ask the scribe to write it for you, be your shliach, or hold the pen, whatever. But and puts it together. But the point is that you can do it. So it's a doable mitzvah. Is it a mitzvah for women? Certainly, because a woman, that's all she has to do is let's say what? That's right. It's not time down. And by the way, the mitzvah of writing a Torah, just to add, I don't want to digress just for half a second, is also to have one. So here we go. Once again, we do this. We get this concept of doing a mitzvah and getting it done. Writing is a wonderful thing, but it's also imposing on persons to have a Torah. Now, you have a Torah in your house? No, you don't have a Torah. You have a Torah. No, that's Torah. So how do you do it? It's very simple. The Torah served as a form of education in ancient times. Nowadays, we have printed books. Buy books. And you did the mitzvah. Mitzvah number 15 is accomplished by buying this. You should have your own. You should have your own chumash. You should have your own siddur, your own Torah, and so on and so on. So that's the mitzvah of doing something and getting it done. The bris is a mitzvah to do it and to get it done. The problem is, since the mitzvah is incumbent upon an 8-day-old baby, he can't do it. Needless to say. So therefore, someone does it for him. Who's supposed to do it for him?
Father.
The father. But now the father, you understand, he's he's not exactly trained in the medical field. In fact, he's a little shaky. In fact, he was once he's a retired surgeon, so he gives it over to a mohel, to an expert, a circumciser, who knows how to do it, and he does it for him, and he does it as an expression of agency. I'm your agent. Halacha recognizes agency as a very legitimate way of getting a mitzvah done. So I'm sitting at someone's table on Friday night, and there's a mitzvah to say Kiddush. He says a Kiddush, I listen in. Good enough? Good enough. Why? He's my agent. Is it always better to try and do it yourself? Certainly. But if you can't, you can't. If you are a retired surgeon, then you certainly don't want to do it, right? So you want to make sure that you get it done. If you can do it yourself, swell. If you can't do it yourself, if there's 10 people at the table on Friday night, you have 10 kiddishes before you get a break, you'll be starving. So therefore, one kiddush should be sufficient. So the idea is that use a agent. This baby is going to use an agent. But the baby has a problem. He's not old enough, mature enough, or intelligent enough, he's only 8 days old, to appoint an agent. So how do you appoint an agent? The answer is, you see, that this mitzvah he doesn't have to do. The baby doesn't have to do the mitzvah. He has to get it done, but he doesn't have to do it because he's only 8 days old. And besides, he's not even bar mitzvah. So I can't ask him to do anything. You can't ask him to do anything if he's not 13. I mean, you can train him, whatever it is, but until the boy's bar mitzvah, or girl 12, excuse me, there's no obligation on the person, on the child. So who does the mitzvah? Who's obligated the mitzvah? The father. That means that there's a mitzvah in which someone does for another. I'm obligated to do what you need to get done. So one of the mitzvahs, as you can see in the commentary, go see what you're doing in this paper here, by the way, is look at this text and look at the commentary in the bottom. So you look at the commentary in the bottom, it says, the commandments of a father concerning his son, circumcising him. You are going to circumcise your baby. You can't do it. Appoint an agent. Appointing an agent means what? Means I'm an adult. I have a right to ask you to do something, and it's halachically accepted. It's legally a proper transfer, and you please do this for me, and it's done. Now, another thing he needs to do is called a redemption. The redemption, if he's a firstborn, Hebrew, that's called anybody? Pidyon ma. Okay, better. Pidyon aben. No hands, full hands. Pidyon aben. Pidyon aben. Are you a b'chor? No. Anybody have firstborn? Anybody b'chor? Oh, there you are. Did you get redeemed yet?
No.
You didn't get
Thanks for
redeemed.
reminding me.
You didn't get redeemed. Come on, it just. Yeah. So I'm sure you were redeemed when you were 30 days old. Probably. Check it out. There are cases when people do forget about it. Like a father forgets about doing it for his child. So if a father actually does forget, or maybe he's not religious, he doesn't not conscious of, not aware of it, so whatever it is, the young boy is required to do it by picking an event for himself when he gets older. Let's say a person, his father didn't circumcise him. Maybe his father wasn't Jewish, even though his mother was. Let's say his father's a religious, doesn't believe in it. Let's say they come from Russia, where in Russia over there, they particularly don't do those kind of things. So then the person is required to do it for himself. Now, if he's circumcised, that's all he needs, because we said many times, it's a little drop of blood, and there you can have the mitzvah done. And that is the way a person gets it done for himself, even after he's been circumcised by, let's say, a doctor or whatever, by virtue of the mohel doing that. And that is also acceptable. But we want to get across here the idea that parents have obligations to their children. One is what a child can't do, circumcise. The other is for a redemption firstborn. In other words, teaching him Torah. What are you bothering me for? Hello, I'm in the middle of a class. I'll call you right back. Thank you. Okay. So another thing is teaching. I asked him to learn. Funny thing about it is that the interest, the concern, is that a parent wants to provide for his child his spiritual needs, his spiritual upbringing. Send him to yeshiva. You can't teach him yourself. Maybe you're busy at work, so you send your child to the yeshiva, and it has a rebbe there who's your agent, who will teach him on your behalf. Right? Let's make sure he does homework with him tonight. Don't forget that. So you get your two choices.
Choose wisely, Ron.
Choose wisely.
Wait, I thought you weren't supposed to have fun.
Yes.
Actually, I usually do these things very simply. I go blindfolded,
Whichever one you picks up.
I got in trouble for bringing.
I know. So I forgave you by now.
So I can bring a Coke.
You can bring it. You can bring 10. Yeah. I mean, really, I used to be a Coke addict. Actually, after when I was in the hospital, my nurse asked me if I had any bad habits. I said I was a Coke addict. She freaked out. It's a true story. True story. She actually freaked out. I said, Coca-Cola, relax. True story. True story. True as I'm sitting here. Okay, so anyway, what do we got here? We got here that you gotta give your child a circumcision, a redemption. You gotta teach him Torah. Does a father have an obligation to teach his child Torah after the child is 13? In fact, let's put it this way: the child wasn't circumcised or redeemed. The child's now 13.
It's his own responsibility.
It's own responsibility. Now, okay, so I can see him hiring a Moel to get his own circumcision because his father didn't do it. I can see him getting a redemption because his father forgot to do it. But the father's a religious man. He circumcised his child. And in fact, he redeemed him. And he gave him a good education, sent him to yeshiva, learned with him, did everything. At 13, does the father no longer have an obligation to learn with the son? Does that stop?
No.
So the answer is, it doesn't, you're right, except for the fact that now the child also has an obligation to learn on his own. And so he's already entering into adulthood to a certain level of 13 or a girl of 12 in which they have their obligations to do. But in any event, we're concerned here with a parent's job. And the other thing is you got to teach him a craft, you got to teach him a job. You give him help him in business, open up a business for him, get him a college education. I'm not sure about college, but get him an education of sorts. And arrange his marriage. You got to find a wife for your son. And you certainly have to find a husband for your daughter. Right? So you have to be actually involved in these things as a parent. This is parenting. Parenting, as we talked about in past weeks, is the issue of the mitzvah of having children. We talked about that the difference between the Jew and the non-Jew does not have an obligation to direct the child. We have such an obligation. All these obligations here, once they're written in the Mishnah, which is the oral Torah, which is the rabbinic interpretation of the Torah, where do they get it from? They got it from the original mitzvah called have children.
Be fruitful and multiply.
Right, be fruitful and multiply. That's where they got it from. So you have to understand the source. See, when we learn Mishnah, as we're learning now, this is a written expose of Talmudic teachings based upon the lessons that they were taught orally until they finally wrote it down throughout the centuries from the time Moshe Rabbeinu received the Torah. What does the Torah mean when it says be fruitful and multiply? This is what it means. Now, but the Torah also says separately to have circumcision. Correct. That's the case. You didn't do it, you didn't get it. So you do it yourself. The Torah also says the first one will be redeemed. Correct. That you should do it in case you didn't get it done. The Torah also says that you should learn Torah. In case you weren't taught, you should start learning. In other words, while these mitzvahs are independent mitzvahs on a person, they're also incumbent upon a parent. That's what we want, the message we want to get across. And therefore, this is what is called raising a child, proper parenting. These mitzvahs are obligatory for men. The father is obligated to perform these mitzvahs. Women are exempt. The mother is exempt from them. Since, let's go to the next page. Women are not obligated to perform these commandments for themselves. Women are not obligated to circumcise or to have a firstborn redemption or to even learn Torah for that matter. Why aren't they? Because obviously the issue of learning Torah, which is an all-encompassing mitzvah, is a mitzvah which in fact is incumbent upon the male, because the female has far more overwhelming obligations and responsibilities. To whom? To the children. Well, then she does have obligations to the children, doesn't she? So when the Mishnah says here, the commentary says that they're exempt from these particular mitzvahs.
Absolutely.
From these particular specifics. But how about all the other parts? How about changing diapers?
No, but what about making your husband get the bread from time? That was an example in the Torah.
Oh, okay, with Zipporah.
Yeah.
But Zipporah, and that's true also. In other words, the fact that a woman steps in, let's say, in a place where the job needs to get done, right? So that's a wonderful thing. But that she does on a voluntary basis. She's not obligated, but she steps in anyway. Why? Because she's a heroic person, right? So we have a Mishnah that says, a statement in the Talmud that says, woe unto the generation whose leader is a woman. pretty chauvinistic statement. I mean, goodness gracious. I mean, I have a lot of courage to stand up here in front of this room and say that. I mean, I'm sure it's a bracha, I'm not killing it. But the truth is that the reason the Gemara says it is because it shows that the generation had no men. And no one stood up. And they take this lesson from the great prophetess, Devorah. How many of you have heard of Devorah? Deborah the prophetess. Great lady, right? Devorah was a woman who became prophetess in Israel. And she became a prophetess in Israel because she was a leader of great genius and prophecy and spirit, and she was leading the people. And in fact, there really wasn't anyone in the generation compared to her.
She pushed them to stand up, and then the men wanted to stand up.
Well, there's a war going on now. The war's going to go with the Philistines, the Philistines, right? So she calls Barak, the general. Right? Now listen, Barak, she says, we're going to go to war. So as a prophecy, these are people that have been ravaging the countryside. We have to go to war against them. I want you to be the general. Now you understand, Barak, I'm a woman. I don't go out to the front, and I'm not a general. That's not what I do. I may be a prophetess, I may be the leader, I may be the spiritual leader of the people, because no one else stood up. But the reality is that you got to go out and do the fighting. Barak says,
if you don't go with me,
wimpy.
I will not go.
Wussy. What does he say? If you don't come with me, I'm not going. Shows you what kind of men were there those days, you know? we once had a prime minister named Barak. Remember that guy? He was the same kind of guy. Right? Not a very manly man. Anyway, so she says to him, okay, if you need me there for spiritual guidance and for inspiration to help you to generate the war, I will go with you. But understand something. The success of the war, which is the destruction of the leader of the Philistine, a man named Sisera, will not come through your sword. You won't get a chance to kill him. You won't have that merit or that mitzvah. In fact, you know who will have it? A lady, to your shame. Okay. So the war starts, and they fight the war, and the Plishtim Hashem is with our people, and we win the war without them batting an eye. We just knock them all out.
That's where Yael comes in.
That's right. How many people are named Yael? Anybody? Who's Yael? Anybody? So Sisera runs away. Sisera runs, and he finds the tent of Yael. Now Yael is a very great lady who realized what's going on, and she invites him in and says, look, I see you're hungry and thirsty and running and this and that. I'll take care of you, as a woman should. And she gives him some
Warm milk.
She gives him food,
Warm
cheese.
milk.
She gives him cheese particularly,
Everything heavy.
right? And everything that's
Some meat.
and make them dry. Now you need something to drink. Here's some wine. A little more wine. And he gets really drowsy. And he says, don't tell anybody that I'm here. And he falls asleep. And she chops his head off.
Which is nice.
It's a wonderful thing. Right? Boom. But it's not a very womanly thing to do. I mean, it's not even nice for men to do, but you have to do what you have to do. Right? You have to fight the war. Really, all wars that have to be fought against evil people. But Yael, and the Torah says, not only did this shame Barak and Devorah's prophecy came true, but more importantly, says the Talmud, that Sisro, that Yael is to be blessed as a woman of the tent. What does it mean, a woman of the tent? That she knows her place. She knows that Hashem is destined for her to be a homemaker, to be a wife, to be a mother, to be a person who is in partnership with Hashem in the creative process. She knows how Hashem has built her, made her, and what He expects from her.
That was a symbolic meaning of the tent peg.
Of the what?
The tent peg.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
That she used the right. And the point of Yael, of course, is that Yael knows what her role is. But sometimes men or women have to step out of their role in order to do what? In order to do what is the role that demanded of you at the moment when no one else is doing it. Step up to the plate. And so the great prophet Shmuel, Samuel the prophet, commands Shaul HaMelech, and he says to him, you know that evil nation over there, Amalek? Amalek. She has to be killed, out, destroyed. It's in the Torah. These evil people. These are people that are destroying everybody, they're unleashed. Evil people. There's such things in the world. People have to be destroyed. There's a Talmudic statement, an incredible prophetic statement written 2,000 years ago about the evil nation of Amalek. Everybody knows Amalek is biblical. We don't even know who Amalek is today. And you really can't perform the mitzvah of destruction of Amalek until what? Until you have, until we have our own country and our own land and our own government and our own king and our temple in Jerusalem, and then we can go out and rid the world of this evil, which the Torah wants us to do. Because we all know that the evil was of Haman and Purim, was Amalek, and all other enemies have always been Amalek ever since. And he commands Shaul HaMelech, now's the time to kill him. And he goes, you're the king, I've appointed you, God said so, here's your first task, destroy Amalek. Once you destroy them, we can build a temple in Jerusalem and have the divine presence reside throughout the world. So he goes out there and he kills them all out. Except he leaves over one person, the king, Akla. And Shmuel, the Navi, prophet, comes to him and says to him, you didn't do the job. You didn't follow Hashem's command. Yes, I did. I got everybody. Except for none. He left the king.
The cattle.
And the cattle also, right? The cattle also. Well, we want to bring the cattle so we can go over sacrifices to God. God doesn't want your sacrifices. God wants you to listen to it. Do what you're supposed to do. And so the king Shaul is very vain. He says, look, you come here to the battlefront. You're the prophet, you're our inspiration. And we ask of you to please go out and greet the people with me in a great triumphant victory. This is absolutely not. You want to vindicate what you did and validate what you did? Absolutely not. You did a wrong thing. And so Shmuel starts to walk away. And he tugs on Shmuel's robe. Right? And it rips. And when it rips, Shmuel turns around and says to him, you see how my coat just ripped? That's how God will rip away the kingdom from you. Your son will not take over. A new king will arise, not in your family. You lost the kingship. And so Shmuel turns around and he says, that king that you left, and remember who Shmuel is, Samuel the prophet, a very holy individual. He looks very holy. He has a long sort of beard. Very distinguished black hat. Wait, looks like it look that way in those days. That's the way he right? And he was very distinguished, dressed very distinguished. He was a very holy man. You see, a holy man, right? Just like Devorah was a holy woman. And Yael was a holy woman, even though she cut the guy's head off. And Shmuel turns around. Imagine this prominent, distinguished, leading rabbi, and picks up a sword and kills Agag. People are, whoa, rabbi, gotta step up to the plate. You have to step up to the plate. When you have to do what you have to do. Our job is not to do what we're convenient in doing. Our job is to do what Hashem asks of us. Even sometimes it may be very distasteful. Nevertheless, our job is to listen to Hashem. And so this is an example of how Devorah, the great lady, stood up. But understand that, therefore, if a woman has to step in,
Rabbi.
one second, a woman, let's say, wants to give a circumcision to the child, or she's not obligated, we said, or the redemption, or the teaching of Torah, but what?
Make
When
sure
her
it
husband
gets
died,
done.
her husband died.
Make sure it gets done.
She make sure it gets done. Her husband died. And as you said, Zipporah, Moshe Rabbeinu's wife, did it for Moshe's son, because Moshe was neglectful. So when we say we're not obligated, doesn't mean you don't have to step in when you have to step in. Anybody should step in. It's a matter of no obligation because there's such a preoccupation of significant work that a woman has to do throughout the entire household, for the entire family, to raise the children and to direct the children and to teach them, not teach them Torah, teach them the foundations of Judaism. What's the foundation of Judaism different than Torah? Well, basically, the foundation of Judaism is what we cover here. Torah, it's something else entirely. That's an entirely different academic pursuit of the wisdom of Hashem, whether it's relevant or irrelevant. We're learning relevant stuff, but we need to know how to live. But there's a vast amount of literature out there to learn the Torah of God, the wisdom of God, the will of Hashem, the sense of how the creation of the world operates. That's a man's stance. The woman's stance is to know the basics, the foundation, and then to transmit them to the children in a way that a man cannot. So therefore, these mitzvahs are obligatory upon the man, not upon the woman. On the other hand, should the woman be part of this by, let's say, taking care of other tasks to allow her husband to take care of these things? Absolutely, that's her role. So these are the responsibilities of parenting. How about the now next commandment, second line of the right hand side? All the commandments of a father on a son. What commandments does a son have to do for the father? Let's take a look. Line 3: respect, honor. Do not sit in his place. Do not contradict him. Honor, helping him get dressed, serving him food. So let's understand something. What is honor? What is respect? Once again, honor is giving him food, addressing him, or mother or father, and the same thing. But honor, but that's honor. Respect is something else, and respect and honor is respect is honor is don't sit in this place, don't contradict it. So once again, let's say the respect would be: don't argue with your father, don't disgrace your mother, don't fight with them, argue with them, yell at them. Do not sit in his place or her place, and do not sit while they're standing. Those are demonstrations of respect. Honor, that's something else. Honor is, Mom, you need something. Dad, you need something. You see the difference? Okay. And seeing this difference, okay, both men and women are obligated to their parents in this way. It doesn't make a difference if you're a son or a daughter, you're obligated to take care of your parents in this manner. Now, what happens, and people have asked the question, I addressed the situation in a much more extensive form years ago. What happens if you have an abusive parent? So the answer is, the respect must remain. The honor, you're exempt. I don't have to be there to help my father put on his jacket when he's going to snap. I don't have to do that. But I still cannot yell, scream, curse, berate, insult my father. I can't do that. So we have to understand that difference. In fact, honoring, when you honor someone, what you really do, you're giving someone some sort of assistance. You honor your guests by giving them food. You honor people by helping them. One of the best things you can do in honoring a parent is helping a parent to get from place to place because he doesn't drive. That's a very big mitzvah to do. So these are the kind of different things that you're responsible for. Men and women are equally obligated, except for one little detail. One little detail. The detail is what happens if a woman gets married. Now she has obligations to her husband. And those obligations to the husband are obligations that do what? That make it that you have to take care of your husband's children, which are your children, right? But he may not be able to take care of them in the early days, the early childhood. That's what the mother and the wife comes in. But there's many other taking care of feeding a parent, feeding your husband. Now, what about the husband's responsibility to the wife? The husband's responsibility to the wife is to get out there, make a living, make some money, right? And in an optimum situation, she should not have to work. That's the proper way. In a less than optimum situation, so then a woman has to work to help out, to give some assistance because times are hard and we're not making all the kind of money we need to make to make ends meet. But otherwise, the mother's chief responsibility is the responsibility of the home and the food and the cleaning and all these menial tasks that people will think about and ridicule or disrespect. We don't, because we believe that sometimes the supportive role is greater than the actual role itself. We talked about that. You can win the Oscar for the best actor, you can win the Oscar for the best supporting actor. The supporting personality is a person who subjugates himself or herself for what? For a higher and a greater cause. This guy is running for president. He wants to win the state of Texas in order to get elected. He needs that. And he can, because Texas hates it, for whatever reason, he's making up. And he chooses a running mate, a vice president, that is from Texas. So it gets him elected, right? So this man who becomes vice president doesn't get the cigar, but he got this guy elected. You see, that's the point of getting it done without actually having to do it. And eventually, as their children grow and begin to respect the relative roles of their mothers and fathers input into their lives, they realize the value of what a mother means. Or the value of a mother is the foundation of it all. There can't be no Torah without a mother. There can't be no life without a female. There can't be no development without the nurturing and the softness and the gentleness of a woman. And so that's why the husband realizes that, cherishes his wife, respects his wife, puts her on a pedestal, realizes what she's done for him, that he's nothing without her. So now we begin to understand the relative roles and at the same time development of the family in terms of children and how children are taught their respective roles. And that's why, of course, it's so important to have separate education where you have boys in boys' schools and girls in girls' schools. That's besides all the other hormone problems that there might be when they get to be teenagers. But the point is that these mitzvos are mitzvos that relative responsibilities of parenting. The next point of the Mishnah is, in the second paragraph there, is the mitzvahs that are responsible. And so once again, how does a woman manage her responsibility to her parents and her children at the same time, or to her husband at the same time? And frankly, there needs to be an understanding between husband and wife in terms of where she can do what she needs to do for her parents at the same time. But to realize that she may not abandon her parental duties or her wifely duties for her parents. So she's got to fit it in somehow. Point being is that there is a realization that you have to juggle. And that's why this mission is talking about mitzvahs of fathers to sons, sons to fathers, mothers to daughters, and daughters to mothers. What are we talking about? We're talking about understanding a familiar role in terms of a family role, in terms of being able to juggle, particularly if you're, let's say, a young adult and your parents, God bless them, are alive, and you got little children at the same time, and you're really juggling. And that's exactly the whole point. That's exactly what the mission is trying to teach us in terms of realizing, again, a priority of immediate family, which includes, of course, your husband and children. Still, husband has to pitch in order to be able to allow the wife to give some degree of concentration on the parent. And if she cannot, because of responsibilities at home, in which she has these obligations, so then she may appoint an agent. Now, let's say a husband, it's easier for him to take care of his parents. Well, we got to take off work. What's work? Who cares about work? So your boss will get upset with the big deal. Right? Sorry, boss, I'm a good lawyer. I'm a very loyal worker. So the boss says to me, you're Jewish, you got all these holidays. How many holidays you guys got? Well, I got Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Sukkot and Simchas Torah, and I got Pesach and I got Shavuot. How many holidays you guys have? Says this dumb guy, right? Because he doesn't know, he doesn't understand. And we say to him, well, listen, I'm a very good worker, very talented, capable, and furthermore, dedicated and devoted, as my tradition, my Jewish tradition has taught me to be. And the same tradition that teaches me to take off on my holidays teaches me to be available to you on Sunday if you need it, or Thanksgiving if you need it, or on Labor Day if you need it. You get the idea? So I'm here for you, but I gotta also realize I got a higher priority. But once a guy understands that, then you start juggling your responsibilities, and that's all of life, all juggling responsibilities. And again, the only way to do it is to set priorities. Well, there's no doubt, Shabbat is a priority. I lose my job. In the 30s and 40s of the previous century, Jewish people came from Europe, Sabbath observant people, and we're told, you don't come in on Saturday, you don't come in on Monday. And many lost their jobs week to week. In those days, there was no recourse, no such thing as suing for religious freedoms, or and people suffered immensely, particularly in the Depression years of the 30s. You couldn't get a balako. You couldn't get stuff. So what's it really mean? What it really means is that you have this idea of setting priorities. My holidays are my priorities. My job is a priority too, not the ultimate priority. If I lose it, I lose it. I'm still breathing. The 4 major needs of a human being. I'm digressing, forgive me. What are the 4 major needs of a human being? So I'll say them. You want to tell me?
Food, breathe,
Air, clothing, food, drink. Okay? Sleep. Who's that sleep? Sleep. That's for wimps. Okay, that is important to sleep, but let's not give it that much of a priority. That's the least important thing you got in life. Top 4, put them in order. Number 1, the most important thing of all of these 4. Food. No. Air. Number 2. Water. Number 3. Food. Number 4. Clothing. And you could be naked if you got food and stuff. I mean, okay, but I might add a 5 and not sleep. I might add a 5 called shelter. Right? A home. You want to be homeless? So, but putting these things in order, as I've said, of a priority, right? These are the things we need, priorities in life. Number one is air. How much does air cost? Zero. Number two is water. Also pretty much zero. You can dig a well or go to a water fountain, right? I can't afford a bottle of water. You'll survive. Number three, food. Yeah, you do need food. You gotta have food. And that costs. But again, it doesn't cost as much as clothing does it? Clothing is a little extra. And clothing doesn't cost nearly as much as shelter does it? Right? Right? How about transportation? Well, I think that's where sleep is. That's a little sleep at the wheel. But the point is that these things teach us how to juggle our priorities. Once again, our Judaism is very much up there within our priorities. And Judaism will govern all of these factors, in fact. The food, what we eat, and what we're not permitted to eat. Even certain wines we're not permitted to drink, and varies all these things. I mean, our clothing is legislated by the Torah. How does Torah legislate clothing? You can't wear what? Linen wool, right? You can't wear linen wool together, right? You gotta have a check. Nowadays, the easiest way to check it is to realize that most garments are not made out of linen wool combinations, which makes it easier, but there are problems in men's suits, in the lapel, and these need to be checked. Every single suit you buy. And what they do is they simply make a little hole in here, and they take a piece of canvas inside out, put a little dye on it, and if it turns a certain color, you know it's shotness, and the other color it's not shotness. If it is shotness, remove the canvas, put a new one in, and you're ready to go. It's a simple procedure, but it has to be done. So the idea of mitzvahs that are they're setting up priorities, and the priority of a woman is the home. A man would say, the rabbis in the Talmud would call their wives their homes. She's the boss of my home. She's the chief executive officer. And so, in this week's parsha, you will find that 3 guests come to Avram. They're called 3 angels, but he thinks they're guests at the beginning anyway. And as he sees these guests, he brings them in because he likes guests. You know, he's a very hospitable guy. And they ask him, "Where's your wife?" That's a little forward.
Yeah, that's very, you don't ask. That's not why.
But they did it for a reason. Because he responded and said, "My wife, she's in the den, in Eboy," which rabbis learned is one of the major rules of hospitality. It's a rule not on the host, but on the guest. You have to not only be a good host, you also have to know how to be a good guest. So if you're invited, you bring a bottle of wine, right? All kind of nice things to be a nice guest. Is the answer, say the right things. They said the right thing. Why? Because when they asked Avram for his wife, he would beam with pride and say, "My wife, she's in the tent preparing the food." And this made him happy. And the guests, therefore, by that question, made him happy. They were good guests. So we understand the importance of this role and how we understand it and its value. And if its value is essential, because it is foundational. It's your foundation. If you haven't got a good wife to take care of you, then you've got a table with no legs. Simple as that. And so, therefore, we're learning here that another rule about mitzvahs in paragraph number 2 on the right-hand side is line number 6 is obligatory for men and women. Both sons and daughters are obligated to fulfill those commandments. Okay, we said that with the proviso that the daughter has a responsibility to the family. That we said. Next line. And all positive time-related obligations. Watch this now. Positive time-related. Not negative commandments, but positive ones. How many positives are there? 248, right? Okay. All these positives are time, but they're time-related. That means they're limited to a time, whose observance is dependent upon a specific time, such as shofar and sukkah and lulav. Shofar is restricted to Rosh Hashanah. Sukkah is restricted to Sukkot. These mitzvahs, men are obligated to perform them, but women are exempt. Women are exempt. Why? Because they can't be held bound to time. women have this obligation to take care of the baby needs me, this feeding time, it's this time, it's that time, whatever it is, and I got to take care of the kids. Women are exempt. The Gemara derives this from their exemption from the obligation of tefillin, which is learned from the proximity of tefillin and Torah education. The verse, you shall teach them and you shall tie them for a sign. Just as women are exempt from Torah and from tefillin, which is a positive obligation caused by time, so they're exempt from all positive commandments obligated by time. The Torah says, teach the children Torah. We learn that the women are exempt from that because they're busy teaching the foundations. If that's the case, then the tefillin, which is next to the Torah, is also an obligation only upon men. If tefillin is an obligation which is only on men and not women, because tefillin is required as a time-related, how's tefillin time restricted?
Only during the day.
Only during the day. Can't be done at night. So therefore, a woman can't be held responsible for that. So let's talk about davening. Are women obligated to pray every day? The answer is yes. Are men obligated today? Yes. How many times a day does a man pray? How many times a day is a woman obligated to pray? Once. Does she have a restriction of time, such as morning, afternoon, evening? No. She does not. There's no shachrit, mincha, and arvit for a woman. She can daven whenever she wants, any time of the day, to say Amidah, the 18 blessings. So whenever there's time and fact there, women are exempt. So are women exempt from sitting in the sukkah? No. Sure they are, because it's a sukkah at a specific time. Sukkah is a specific time. So if the sukkah is a specific time, I'm not, a woman's not obligated. I mean, she might not be able to be free to sit in the sukkah at this moment because she has to go.
Bring the food back.
Bring your food back, whatever. Say what you want to say.
So I read that when women recite the Pratzah Shahar, are they allowed to eat
Before? Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
It says in Messenger they're only allowed to have tea and cake.
Women?
Yeah, I have it right here. I have it right
I
here.
tell you, you can have a full course meal.
Okay.
A full course breakfast.
That's from the rabbi.
That's what so are women obligated to eat matzah and Pesach?
Yes.
Wait a second, that's a time restricted mitzvah. Because they were part of being saved, right? But there's also another reason. Because oftentimes you will find that a positive mitzvah is connected to the negative, such as you eat matzah, you can't eat chametz. Is that right? They're connected with each other, right? You can't eat chametz, therefore eat matzah. Well, can women eat chametz? Of course not, because that is a prohibition, that's a negative. Women are obligated in all the negatives. There's no time factor with the negative. The negative tells you what? Don't do it. Okay, I'm busy, I'm not doing it anyway. So therefore, women are obligated in all the negatives. Women are obligated in Kiddush on Friday night.
Yes.
Yes, but it's time. It's only Friday night. Why are they obligated? Because it's connected to a negative. What's the negative? Don't do any work on Shabbat. If the women can't do work on Shabbat, they're obligated in Kiddush Shabbat. You get it? Connection between the positive and the negative, right? And so the same thing happens with Pesach. Matzah and chametz. Can't eat chametz, gotta eat matzah. And of course, they're also part of the miracle. Women obligated to hear the Megillah on Purim.
Yes.
Why?
Because Queen Esther.
Queen Esther! That's enough. She did the job, right? Okay.
Rabbi,
Yes, sir.
so who is the man that ran through with the sword in front of the people?
That was Samuel the prophet. Small enough.
Is his descendancy of forefathers connected to Pinchas in any way?
That's a great question. I don't know.
No, because he was from Ephraim.
Well, who?
Pinchas was a Cohen.
And
And
Shmuel?
Shmuel was Ephraim.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Shmuel was a lady.
I don't. Oh no, wait. Who am I thinking of? No, yeah. Who's
Shmuel was a lady.
I thought it was right?
What was his father?
His father was from Ephraim.
His father was, he was there, but he was a lady. Shmuel was a lady. We're gonna have to duel this out.
I will not go against the rabbi.
Okay.
I'm pretty raised.
Shmuel is a descendant of Korah.
Sorry?
Right from the tribe of Levi.
I should have known that. I should remember that. Yeah, he descended of Korah. Who's Korah?
Korah was rebellion.
Korah was a bad guy. And who gets one nothing?
Oh, yeah.
How do you
Because
figure-
some of them were.
how do you figure that a bum like Korah should have such a holy, righteous son like Shmuel Navi? So the rabbis teach a very interesting lesson. Lesson is, no man should ever be allowed to take position of leadership unless he has a skeleton in the closet
There's not a tzaddikim without
without flaw.
without a flaw.
In other words, if a guy, let's say, is so perfect, he can't possibly be a good leader because he can't understand other people's imperfections. He
Yeah.
can't.
You know, the relation.
Right, you can't. So if you have, in Hebrew we say very interesting, אין ממנים פרנס על הציבור, אלא אם כן יש לו קופה של שלצים על ראשו. קופה של שלצים. And he was much more, how do you say it, much more descriptive, right? They don't call it, we don't call it a skeleton closet, we call it a pack of rats over your head. It's a little more descriptive, but the message is the same. So of course, Korach said that he didn't believe in this. He said, Moshe, the man I want to fight with, he has all these scandals. I mean, after all, his mother gave him over to an Egyptian mother, and then he married this other woman who wasn't really Jewish at the time. He got all that gang scandal. Moshe, he's no good. I'm clean as a whistle. So we say to him, well, you don't understand something. Clean as a whistle is no good. You have to have some sort of pack of rats or a skeleton. And he says, well, I see in the future a great hero coming out of me, a man named Samuel the prophet, 5 generations hence, 6 generations, whatever. And he's going to be the great Shmuel Navi. And he comes from great stock, like me. And he says, that's exactly the point. Shmuel Navi had a pack of rats too. And you know what a rat was? You're a rat. You're the one that proves the point. Exactly. Anyway, let's continue. And now there is a Mitzvos. I'm on line, the second paragraph on the right hand side. I'm on Mitzvah line number 7 or 8. 8. All positive commandments not time related. Are you with me? Such as a mezuzah. There's a mitzvah, have a mezuzah on the door. I don't care when you do it. Do it night, do it 6 a.m., do it 3 a.m. I don't care when you do it. Returning a lost article. To make a difference when you return it? Return it as soon as possible. What a mitzvah, return a lost article.
Well, you want to hear the sweater. If you borrow somebody's sweater, you cannot, if someone, for how the loan goes,
Yeah, but the
you take it as collateral. you have to return it for
That's a different, that's unrelated.
I know, but it's brought to my mind. That's
Right.
weird.
But it's if you find a lost article, how would you return it anyway? Unless you know the person
They approved it.
that lost it, right? So I once lost my wallet on a bus in New York City. Fat chance of finding that wallet. Oh, maybe there's $100 in it, whatever. But all my credit cards and my driver's license and my bank card and my social security and my blue shield, right? It was a wallet. And I'm miserable. And I was on a Jewish bus. There's a special buses in New York that go from different Jewish communities that are not governed by the transportation department. They're all operated private buses from Muncie and Lakewood and Brooklyn and all these different places. Anyway, so the guy who found my wallet was a nice Jewish man. Now, he looked at the wallet and he didn't know me, which is kind of rare because I did not know street block. But it's in New York, so I understand. Wait, hold on one second. Hello, are you here?
Hi, no, can I come in 5 minutes?
You can come in 7.
7.
I believe in 7 minutes. I have to go to a very important sin for my, there's the mitzvah of circumcising your child, and then and then you have to give the opinion of Ben, we said it for 30 days, right? Redemption is the firstborn, and then you have to teach him Torah. So there's a mitzvah, it's not listed here, but it's a custom we established based upon a passage in the Torah in which a 3-year-old boy does not cut his hair until his 3rd-year-old birthday. And today my great-grandson, that's my grandson's child, is having his upsharing, and I have to go to the party and to cut his hair. So then we'll talk about that. Anyway, so this guy finds the wallet, and he has no tree block. So he goes back to Muncie, where he's coming from, and he goes to shul one morning, and he says, anybody here from LA? Guy raises his hand. Yeah, I'm from LA. You know this guy, Tzvi Block? Yeah, I know Block, sure. He's my Rebbe. I learned by him 5 years ago. Give me that wallet. I got my wallet back. Now, can you imagine how much joy I had getting that wallet back? Can you think of it? What a great mitzvah to return a lost item. Glad you waited to return a lost item. But there's no time restriction, so women are obligated. Okay, what else are women obligated to do? Construct a guardrail on one's roof. What's that? That's a mitzvah called ma'akeh. We nickname it a ma'akeh. Ma'akeh is a person, is a requirement by the Torah that if you have a roof, it's flat, people can go up on it. You need to put a rail high enough to make sure people don't fall down. Otherwise, you're responsible, and you cause, God forbid, loss of life or injury. So you have an obligation to do that. Nowadays, we also find the same way that an obligation is done with the handrail. It's also called a way of preventing someone from falling down. So anything at all that makes your house safe. And if you're young mommies, baby-proof, right? You know what a baby-proof is? Okay? So this is a mitzvah of the Torah. Women are obligated, right? Doesn't make a difference when you do it ASAP. The mitzvah of Kiddush and Shabbat and holidays, but there are mitzvahs. Charity is a mitzvah of women obligated. But because it doesn't make a difference in time. Men and women are obligated to perform mitzvahs, such positive commands that are tied to certain times, which are obligatory for women that are different exceptions to the rule. So we got the exception to the rule. The eating of matzah is exception to the rule. Kiddush and Shabbat, exception to the rule. Rejoicing on festivals, exception to the rule. Participating in Hakel on Sukkot, another mitzvah we'll talk about later. That's obligated on Sukkot for women. Similarly, there are positive commandments not tied to certain times, which were exempt anyway, like the study of Torah, as we explained earlier, and the redemption of the firstborn. The general principle of our Mishnah is not absolute, but only refers to the majority of commandments, but not to them all. There are always exceptions to the rule. Okay. However, we continue reading. All negative commandments, whether they are tied to certain times or not, doesn't make a difference. Women are obligated. Chametz on Pesach, forbidden. Forbidden to work on Shabbat, forbidden. Prohibition of eating, forbidden, non-kosher, the chaylev or the nevela, all obligated upon men and women equally. Says so in the Torah. When a man or woman shall commit any sin that men commit, the Torah equates men and women for all punishments, except for 2 exceptions. One is, there's a mitzvah that you're not allowed to shave the corner of your beard. Women are exempt. In case you're worried or nervous about it, right? Yeah. Now, what are the corners of the beard, by the way?
A lot higher than you think.
Here, maybe here, over here, wherever it is. So, of course, that makes a big problem. How can you shave? So how do you shave?
You don't go all the way down.
How do you shave? You don't shave?
I trim.
Oh, you trim. Who says that's permitted?
Well, so as long as it's not a blade, it's permitted.
Oh, talk up, man. Talk up. The guy sits there all quiet, knows everything, doesn't say a word. Modest. The prohibition is to put a blade on the face. The prohibition of putting a blade on the face is a prohibition of piercing, destruction of the body. People often ask the question about women and earrings. And the answer is that women are permitted to wear earrings. because that is considered an adornment and a jewelry and a prettiness of the woman, and therefore she's permitted to do that. It does not seem to indicate that the women are permitted other piercings. And frankly, nobody should be doing any piercing. And those idiots that wear, the men that wear earrings, those guys. So, the only permission to wear earrings is for slaves. So if I see a guy walking down the street and I see him there, I say, "Hi, slave. Hello there, man. I'm a slave." Right? All these big he-men, these big baseball players. Anyway, the world's crazy, but that's not our concern. The fact is that piercing is a violation because what it does is it takes away from wholeness of the body. We learn this basically from the prohibition of piercing and cutting a dead body. In other words, autopsies are forbidden unless there is an immediate donor or immediate recipient of where an organ can be donated to save a life. But then again, you can save a life and you can break the whole torque to save a life, right? Except for those 3 exceptions. But you can eat the vitamin kipper. You can certainly cut the body and remove a heart and make a transplant. And the idea of this, of course, is that if there's not an immediate recipient and you want to put it in some sort of bank or something, it's absolutely forbidden to do. You have these things on your driver's license. You want to be a donor, or is it you want to sign something with this in case of my death, this and that? You should certainly not sign it. You should certainly not give away any part of you whatsoever. Therefore, the body is treated with great respect upon demise, upon death, in which the body is washed with proper respect and wrapped in not a suit or dress, but rather in the shrouds and the linens. Make sure everybody's equal. When you were alive, maybe you were richer than the other guy, but now you're dead, you're equal, and everybody's you're all equal, and you'll get the same plot of land, 6 feet. And that's the end of the day. So piercing is prohibited, and therefore shaving with a blade is the same thing, because what it does, it cuts under the skin, and that's forbidden. Can you therefore use an electric razor? Absolutely, without a problem.
What about shaving your neck? That's the thing.
Yeah. In fact, the fact that regarding the shoulders of the beard, because we have a problem with identifying them, we really don't know. Since we have that problem, we just simply don't shave it off, or simply don't use the blade anyway. So I go into the barber, he knows you don't use blades, he knows right away. And all the Jewish people come to the same Mexican barber, Italian barber.
They like the back of your head.
They do that, but we don't permit that anymore. We just don't want to anywhere near it.
So cleaning up the edges.
Yeah, you can put it up. Yeah, but it's like electric. Because the cutters don't go under the skin.
So no blade anywhere.
No blade. We don't play around with blades. So how about the mitzvah here? But there's another mitzvah here. If you'll take a look, it says there's a prohibition. I am 3, 6, 10 lines from the bottom. You shall not mar. As it is written, you shall not mar the corners of the beard. That means you can't cut the corners of the beard. You can't pierce, right? And a woman is not obligated to observe this, even if she has a beard. That's a good one.
That's a problem today.
Well, then that was the lady in the circus. Right? I mean, listen, I assume that as the rabbis wrote this, they were simply trying to simply approach this on a scholarly, intellectual level, and this is an actual one.
They had no idea what they were.
Yeah, well, anyway,
Today's age.
right. Okay, maybe, I don't know. Anyway, since the sages learned your beard and not your wife's beard, that's an interesting thing. It says in the Torah, your beard. So the rabbis say, why did it say your? Just say beard. That means everybody. Your beard. Meaning it immediately does is it makes an exception to the rule. And the rule the exception has to be reasonable. In other words, someone you might think it belongs to, and it doesn't, and that would be the woman. Oftentimes you have to learn this procedure. There's a procedure called, when the Torah writes a specific word that's extra, we learn something from it. Oftentimes an exception to the rule. Now we come to the next one. You shall not round, as it is written, you shall not round the corners, the payot of your heads. That's over here that means that there has to be a sideburn, and the sideburn usually has to go down to the bone, minimum. If it goes blends into the beard, that's fine, but it has to be here. If you're shaving, so then you have to have a hair down to here. But it also, if you're doing these current customs of people shave their heads or something, right?
No designs, you know,
What?
designs, no.
Oh, these crazy designs. Right. By the way, all these crazy haircuts are also forbidden by the Torah, by the passage that says, "Do not go in their customs." And the prohibition of going in the customs of the Goyim is the prohibition of how they dress and how they adorn themselves and haircuts. And so that's why we're not permitted to do those things.
Even if you have a 405 haircut?
You have a 405.
Mine's 405.
Right. So
Barely traffic.
Right. I
Those
mean,
kind of-
yeah, but nevertheless, so there would be people who let us shave their head. If you shave your head, it's okay, but your peyot, which is over here, it goes down to the bone, has to start an inch over the ear. So your hair has to go all the way down there like that, okay? Now, one last point is peyot for a man, obligated to the Torah. Many Hasidic groups, what they do is they take the corners and they let it grow out. And you've seen that. We call it payas, the payot. And frankly, it's what they consider to be beautifying the mitzvah. A lot of kids do it. In fact, the idea of doing it, it becomes a very great observance. And some of them even curl it.
Yeah.
Many different Hasidic groups. And it's a beautiful thing to do for those that have a custom to do it. If you're not accustomed, you're not obligated to this thing. What's important to remember is that there was a community, not just a European one, but a Middle Eastern community called
Yeah,
the Yemenites. The Yemenites, what we call the Temonim, right? Who walked around with Simonim. Simonim were their signs. They called it signs. This is how they demonstrated to the Arabs around them were Jewish, different, by having these hairs sticking out. And frankly, what we do today, when I'm going to do this ceremony for my grandson, is we snip the hair. We make a whole big ceremony. The little boy says a few passages. He just learned the Shema. He learned all about the Torah Tziva, and a few other little things that we're going to do in the ceremony. He learns to put stuff in a box. He learns to he puts on little tzitzit, and he puts on his kippah for the first time, and he gets his hair cut. He's no longer a girl, right? And now he's a boy. And in so doing, we cut the hair reasonably, and then we leave the tail, and he begins to realize that, and they grow them, and they don't have to grow out, but they do have to reach this part of the bone of the cheek, and he realizes that this is one of the things that makes it different, which is beautiful mitzvah, because these are one of the things that make it different. There's no obligation of those that you have to cover your head, but in fact, the only obligation that covers your head is a woman when she gets married. That's the only Torah obligation covering the hair at all. For a man, this is what?
Yeah, you can.
So that once it became an important thing to show fear of heaven and respect for heaven by making a bracha, then we began to wear it all the time as per the custom.
I don't know where.
Per the rabbinic custom to the Rabbanon. Hello, you here?
I'm out front.
You're right out. And so we finish up.